Hello, everyone. Welcome to my workshop or my session on Dash for Littles. They can code too. I'm glad you're here with me, and today we are going to be talking about Dash the robot and how we can use it for our primary students. My name is Victoria Comia Stoy, and I'm an instructional technology facilitator, and I work in Greenville County for Greenville County Schools. And you can find me on Twitter at that Asian IC. In Greenville County Schools, I am part of a team of about 11 other wonderful, amazingly brilliant people who we are technology facilitators, and we also help with a conference called UTC. Can't see it because I think my picture is actually hiding it, but it's UTC. And if you ever get a chance to go to Greenville, we would love to have you at our conference. I also have a podcast that hashtag that Asian IC. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to learn the what, why, and how to incorporate Dash into our K-5 through second grade classrooms and integrating coding into those standards based lessons. Now, just for a moment of honesty, if anybody wants to um, give their actual opinion or think about and self reflect on what you think about coding and Dash in the classroom. I know that it can be um, sometimes difficult to understand why we would need coding in the classroom. And then other people actually embrace it and they have all kinds of materials to code with in the classroom, and they welcome it and embrace it wholeheartedly. So just take a moment to reflect and think about how do you feel about that? So you either have a smiley face and you feel like, yes, they can do it. All our 5-year-olds can. Or I don't know, maybe they can, maybe they can't. Or no, I just don't embrace it. I do not think that it's the right fit. It's not appropriate for them. And that's okay. You can feel all of these things, and as long as you're honest with yourself and how you feel. Today, though, we are going to actually look at Dash. I'm going to just show them to you right here. So here's one of them. And he looks like a toy, so he looks pretty fun. And in my own experience, to be honest with all of you, I did not know how this thing could be implemented in the classroom and the need for it. I wasn't sure how I would implement it in the classroom, especially because I was too busy trying to teach all the standards. I was too busy trying to make sure that my students could read or know their ABCs or know how to add or know how to subtract. And so it's hard to see when do I carve time out into my day to have robots or coding. So that's hard to do. Um, so today we're going to just first talk about the why. Why do we need coding in the classroom? Well, for one, it actually builds computational skills and problem solving skills, and it improves memory. So why not? If something allows our students to gain these 21st century skills, if something allows our students to have skills that help them with problem solving, or if they can collaborate together to try to find the answer to things, helps them to figure out, okay, this code works, but this doesn't. How do we add or subtract, and how do we solve this problem? How do we, get this robot to do what we want it to do? And why not have it in the classroom? And we know that it is hard for kids to remember all the information. So, also, if it helps to improve our memory, again, instead of asking why, maybe we should ask why not. I'll be giving you some examples of how we use Dash, the robot, how I've used it as an instructional technology facilitator, and how some teachers that I've worked with have used it. Now you can see here in these pictures that these students have used Dash with iPads and Chromebooks. Our district is fortunate enough for our students to all have one-to-one Chromebooks, and that's how some of the students will code and have Dash to work. We also have iPads in some schools. Our actual our team has a set of iPads, and we'll take those into the classroom when we work with certain teachers so that students can use them also. I do find that with students who are in kindergarten, first or second grade, especially, um, that using the iPads tends to be easier because they can manipulate things with their fingers. Um, and the Chromebook just may be a little bit more difficult because it's smaller. Now, is it possible for them to use a Chromebook? Yes, it's still possible for them to code on the Chromebook. It's just takes a little bit more time, a little bit more patience. All right, so how do we do this? What do we need to do? Well, we first need to look at the standards that we have and make sure that we are covering the standards for that grade. And we have to ask ourselves, what needs to be taught? So, first things first, we need to look to see, well, what is it that we need to teach the students? Do they need to know their alphabet and matching lowercase to capital letters? Do they need to know the sounds of the letters? Do they need to know how to add up to 10, up to 20, or subtract from 20? So thinking about what your students need to do, or maybe even could be crossed over into other subjects like ELA, retelling stories, or the certain cycles like a life cycle of something. Whatever it is, let's hone in on that so that we know what to teach the students, what to teach our students. And the second step is we need to develop a lesson plan that's geared towards that standard. It's really important for us to know what the standards are, but then also know what's the lesson that we're going to actually have. So, reading what is it that we need to teach, and then, okay, what's this lesson that we need to have for that? And what's our objective? So within this lesson, we're going to incorporate our coding or our robots. When we do that, the third step finally is that we're just going to teach our students how to do things simply, how to drive forward, how to turn right or left, and how to record their answers. And this can be done by first we're modeling and then having students do it themselves. So we're going to model it for the students and then have them do it. It's great to have our directions on the board and then have students try to follow it. Now, thankfully for the site that Dash has, it's on Blockly. It's block coding, and students can also use colors, not just the words, and it helps them with figuring out what to put on for their coding. I'll be giving you some samples of lessons. This one is actually for third grade, but we can talk about how we would make this for our students who are in second, first, or kindergarten. So here's a sample lesson that I created about Dash and creating area. So it found the standard, and now we know that I'm trying to determine the area of a rectilinear polygon. So let's bring it down a couple grades, and maybe students just need to know the length of something or to drive um, Dash so that he creates a certain shape. What is a polygon? Then we need to figure out how could we make a polygon or a shape with Dash. So then our learning targets would be creating a code to create a shape, maybe even simpler, maybe creating a square or a rectangle. And then we could also incorporate some addition and subtraction with this. So when I have given this lesson with students, I typically will give them the example of this is what the code will look like when they finish, and then I'll ask them what kind of shape did they just create. So if you visualize, if you have dash going forward, and I always tell the students that in order for him to go forward, we look at the shape that looks like a triangle, and that's when he's facing forward. So even though his head goes in different ways, wherever this triangle shape is, that is forward for dash. So even if his head is facing this way, if we say go forward, he's still going to go that way. So I would then just have you guys think about if he's going forward and then he turns right and then he goes forward again, and then he turns right, and then he goes forward again, then he turns right, then he goes forward again. What shape was that? And that may be a little difficult because I just did them in the air. But if you said square, woo, you're right. So we just created a square. Now, this may seem like kindergartners can't do it, but I have had kindergartners do this, and it's exciting to see their abilities. I've also had students retell a story. So, this lesson is of retelling the true story of the three little pigs. We all probably know the story of the three little pigs, but this was a true story of the three little pigs. And Dash became the wolf. So students were supposed to code Dash so that he would reach a house. And when he got to it, I don't know if you really know the story, but he actually sneezes. And so he goes, Hachoo! And the house blows down. Okay, so it really wasn't the wolf's fault. He just had to sneeze. So for this activity, as he reached a house, he was coded to sneeze, and students were able to record themselves sneezing, or it was pre-recorded for them. So in this activity, we use iPads and the Dash. Guess which grade level this was? And if you think it was kindergarten, you're right. It was actually used all the way from kindergarten to third grade because this is a text that the media center, the librarian, was using in her class, and therefore it was continued into the STEAM class. So it was a great way for the classes to integrate their lessons. This is another example of littles using Dash and simply using the code to go to us like a square, except for it's not the complete square. It may just be going forward, taking a right, turning right, and then going forward again. And this one, students were matching the lowercase letter to the capital letter, and the teachers were then going around and asking what words start with that letter, what sound does that letter make. So there's a lot of interaction between teachers and students. And again, this is kindergarten. And here's another picture of students working by themselves to code dash to reach the lowercase letter to the capital letter. In this example, we now have second graders, and these second graders were using word problems. I never would have imagined using word problems for coding. However, the engagement is extremely high when you bring in robots and coding. Students had to solve a word problem for how much money they would have if they had certain types of coins, and then they could use manipulatives if they had them, like with coins, and I had pictures of little piggy banks where they would put the coins on there. And after they were able to find the answer, then students were able to code um, something on Dash. And usually it was usually making a shape would be what they would code. Here is the lesson plan that I've used, and it is basically say the same thing. You are using the manipulatives or money cards, and they're having to use the amount of money to make the coins. So I would first model this for the students and tell them how to make the coins, and then code it to reach a certain card with the correct number of coins. So the card may just be on the ground, and Dash would have a starting line, and the correct amount would be on the card, and they would have to drive or code Dash to the correct answer. So I have the word introduction here, but I get it. We're about halfway through, perhaps, of this, and you're wondering why is the introduction in the middle of this workshop? Well, only because I'm going to go back now that you've seen how or different ways that Dash has been incorporated and how littles can actually use it also. I'm going to go back to just telling you how I would introduce Dash into the classroom with the littles, okay? Because um, we need step by step instruction. So sometimes I would come in and I would bring Dash, and we usually have a lot of them. We have, I will usually take about 8 to 10 dashes because I like for the students to work together, at least in partners. So depending on where you live and what size classrooms you guys have, that just depends on how many dashes you need. So our department is fortunate enough to have plenty of dashes where I can check out 8 to 10 dashes and iPads, and then I take them into the classroom and kids work together with them. Now, it's really important for our students to be able to work together in partners, mainly because for the collaboration piece. Like, this is an awesome opportunity for them to talk to each other and to share. And Dash looks like a toy. In fact, some teachers think it's just a toy, but he's not just a toy. Even if he was, how important is it for our primary students to learn through play? Now, our dashes all have numbers at the bottom, and that's because when you turn him on, he will need to be paired with the iPad or Chromebook that you're using. So it's really important that you guys know which dash you have. So if you have one, or multiple ones, it's important to have numbers on them. Our department just likes to have them with a little sticker at the bottom, and he is already charged. But what I tell the students is, I like, look at this little guy. His name's Dash, and they might say, I say hey to Dash, hey Dash, and I talk about what he looks like. But he kind of looks the same all over the place. And I ask them, what does he have on him? And they might talk about his eye, one eyeball, which this lights up. And older students, or maybe even some of your second graders, may be able to code so that the lights do certain things. And he's got these parts here where we can connect different pieces of Dash. We will not be going over that this time, but in other workshops they might. Of course, I talk about how he's got this triangle, which is the front of Dash, and so we always need to watch out for this triangle so we know which way he's going. And then I say how his on button's on this side. We have to turn them on, so we'll turn them on real quickly, and he might talk and turn, and all the kids go kind of wild. Howdy do. So he is now on, and all the lights are on. He does talk. I tell the kids sometimes he gets a little obnoxious and he just says random things by himself, but it's okay. We just ignore it. So I'm going to turn him off just for a moment. And again, we can go online and use the block coding site, makewonder.com, and You can use this site or just Google it, and you will see that it takes you to a block coding site for him. Our iPads already have Blockly on it, and so we just have I have it already ready for the students. Once you get on there, you will click on My Projects. So My Projects is right there, and you would click on it, and I would click Create New, and students will be really interested in all the other different activities. But for this particular one and how I introduce it to the littles, it is um, just simpler, and they're jumping into coding in a simple way. So I actually go to a blank project. You'll see that there are different types of um, projects that you could do with the students. And if that's how you'd like to introduce it to them, that's absolutely fine. We are going to click blank project today. And when you do that, you'll also see this will come up onto your screen where you're going to click the plus sign. And the reason why you do that, you're clicking it because it will connect Dash. You're going to pair them up. Okay, so that's why the numbers are really important at the bottom. You're going to pair up Dash with whatever iPad is on or the Chromebook. Once he's paired up, you are going to show the students how to actually code. And I always show this to them first. I'm modeling it for them and say, look, we're going to look for the word drive. And for kindergartners, sometimes I say, this is a great lesson for us to talk about letters and the sounds that it makes. So D, what sound does D make, or what letter does drive start with? And they'll say D, and you can show them all these different parts. But that, and then we're going to emphasize the fact that we're going to really just look at the word forward, and what letter does forward start with? F. So then we're going to show them to them, and we're going to tell them that we're also going to look at the words turn right. This is also a wonderful opportunity for teachers to talk about right and left, because if, like I said, we tell students that this triangle shows which way Dash is going. And so it's a great opportunity if we know that this is forward, whereas which way is right and which way is left for Dash. And so sometimes we have those teaching moments for them, or we do the trick where it's L, like which one looks like an L when you're looking at it. And so that's your left, and the other one's the right. So there is definitely a lot of teaching opportunities here. We focus on going forward and turning right. We then look at the link that says sound. And again, we talk about, well, what word has at the beginning? And they might say sound or start. And I say, well, let's look at the one that's orange. So we've got some opportunities to talk about color. This is where you are teaching students how to put the sound in and record for Dash. Or you can use other words or other sounds that Dash can actually do. He can already say hi, he can make animal noises or fire siren noises or weird Dash beeps. In the lesson with the wolf, he was sneezing. So the students, all they had to do was click my sounds, and they would record themselves. Okay, oops, excuse me. Let me go back to this one. So they would record themselves for my sounds, and which is easy to do. You're just clicking on the my sound and then clicking a new recording and having them record their own voice. All right, so now we're going to go into having the students actually put the codes together. And I always tell them that they need to make sure they hear it click together. So when the block codes are being placed together, you will hear a click. And I have the students actually listen for that. Like, do you hear that little click? And most of them will listen really intently, and you'll be able to, hey, we did it, and just cheer with them. When you click the forward button and you have that on your screen, as you can see here, it will have you can actually choose how far Dash will go. So this is where it's a great lesson for students for measurement and length. You can talk about this number 30 and how far does Dash go from the start when we press play to 30. And then we can experiment and see what happens if we make that bar go up higher, then the number goes up higher. And so when we press start, what happens to Dash? He also moves, his length is longer, okay, the distance is longer. So that's a great opportunity for teachers to talk about distance and length, and you guys you can try it out. What happens when we have it on 40 or 50? In the lessons that I've done with kindergartners, I do stay with 30 as our distance because I want it to be consistent and so that we're not all over the place, especially if I'm trying to have them create a square. I want that number to still be the same. So usually what I do is I have the students just click, just like this little finger is clicking repeatedly there, just to click right there, and then you get this, that screen comes off, and then you just click the forward so that is attached to the rest of the block coding. This again is how you would enter the sound for your dash. So you would go to My Sounds, you would click on the number and record a new sound. All you're doing is you're clicking record a new sound, and you can make whatever. You can make an animal sound, you can have them say your name. For the older grades or even for younger grades, you can have Dash, you can say the letter sound, or you can have um, word problems, or you can have number problems. And at each one, students can then record the correct answer. So, for example, sure, you could do a chew because we were talking about the wolf earlier, but what if you had a word problem and the answer was 5? Then your sound for number 2, once Dash reaches that word problem, your student would record the answer to that word problem and they would say 5. At the very end of your students creating their code, it should look something like this. Right? So you've got either your iPad and the codes all put together, or their Chromebook, or whatever device they have. So you've got your students who have created this code, and especially for the littles, I really stick with doing something simple like making a square. I hope you guys have enjoyed this session. So I'd love for you to tweet about it, about what you're excited about. You can go to Twitter and you can tag me, that Asian IC, and also at Wonder Workshop. And here's our little STEM I am excited to. And what part of this are you excited about? About learning about Dash? Hopefully, you've learned something different, or you'd like to implement it into your classroom, or talk to somebody about it. Or maybe it's just a different session you're excited about theirs. As long as you're tweeting it out, and we'd love to see that. Again, many thanks to you guys for attending this session, and thank you for the opportunity to be in this International STEM workshop. My name again is Victoria Comey Estoy.